Hi, I'm Rob Campbell. Today we're with Jenny Wassmer, the e-commerce sales director for Thule. Jenny, thanks for making time to talk to us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to talk to you guys about omnichannel.
And so I see from your background there, that may not, that may be a photo, but it's indicative of where you're at. You're coming to us from Boulder?
Yes, tomorrow we'll get the snow, so it's not totally accurate. But yeah, the Thule Group is regionally headquartered in Connecticut, and we have a local office in Longmont, Colorado, which is close to Boulder.
Excellent. So maybe, for today's discussion about omnichannel customer journey, maybe it makes sense to just talk a little bit at the beginning about kind of who your main target markets are.
Yeah, I mean, so traditionally, the Thule Group, and Thule in particular, which is the largest brand in the Thule Group, has targeted the outdoor bike, water, and winter sport enthusiasts. Over the past decade, the brand has grown its audience to what we call active with kids, so the active family, which has really grown from the pandemic effect. And a newer category from our acquisition of the Tepui brand is overlanding and outdoor adventure, and as well as the outdoor travel and just travel at large category.
So then, I mean, how traditionally have you had the most success in connecting with some of those groups or customers in general?
Traditionally, we connect through them through a lot of influencer marketing. So and retail influence. So we invest a lot of time and energy into making sure that the retail sales force for our products in store channels like REI, LL Bean, that they're educated on our products and in love with our products, and then turn around and sell them. Less traditionally and more recently, we've invested a lot in Amazon. We treat Amazon as a search engine, and that has been hugely successful for us, creating some channel conflict, but there is this rising tide effect there. So if we do well in Amazon in the US and Canada, it trickles out to all the channels.
So I want to get into a little bit of the journey and the funnel. I mean, as a brand like Thule that has so much awareness and has so much market share, does it affect like how you weight different parts? Like, are you still as focused on awareness, or how do you mix that with other parts of that journey and, servicing the customers?
Yeah, so it really depends on the category. Because our bread and butter and our history is around roof racks and water and winter sports, awareness is important, but not nearly as important as it is in our active with kids segment and travel. That's where we focus a lot of our time and energy, on the awareness, the top of the funnel. Whereas with the what we call internally sport and cargo segment of our business, we're focused more on the middle and bottom of the funnel, where we're saying, hey, buy this product versus your competitor, with consumers know to research us. Whereas with our active with kids line, that Amazon search engine investment is so important for us, where we're growing in popularity and awareness there.
How about, I mean, we're talking so much about, changes recently, evolutions. What have you seen as kind of the most significant change in your digital sales strategy over the past year?
We've shifted our focus to the top and the middle of the funnel with online content, which I've been really pleased with our ability to come together as a big global company and prioritize that. It's been really hard for us to do that because we are globally headquartered in Sweden, and we have a pretty uniform approach to our brand. But we've been able to come together and do that and create a global strategy for content with regional variances. So where you practically see that play out is on our own website, Thule.com. It used to just be a shopping layer by category. I want a bike rack, I go to bike rack. But now we've added in an activity layer where we're really focused on the target audience. I am a biker. This is my biking activity that I do, or I'm a traveler, or I'm an overlander. And we're seeing a lot of positive effects from that change, but it has been a huge shift for us internally, but a really positive one in the end.
hoping to spend a little time just going over channel strategy and the idea of omni-channel, especially versus kind of multi-channel, and aspirations versus reality. You were pretty frank when we spoke earlier about some of those challenges and the evolutions. Could you kind of take us through a little bit of where you feel you are and where you want to be and how you plan to get there?
Yeah, I think we've effectively been multi-channel, which was seen and realized in the pandemic, where channels were shut down. But as a multi-product and multi-channel brand, we were able to stay relevant and be available to our consumers, which is great. So we're in, we've always been traditional retail specialty. We've grown in our owned website presence with e-commerce. Amazon's been a big focus for us, and we're even in North America for the first time shifting to opening up our first brand store in Denver this summer of 2021. So that'll be a big change for us. So those are all channels, multi-channel, and we're very effective. And then the next step is for us to connect those channels with the consumer mindset of the customer journey, especially when you're purchasing a product that consumers consider an investment, like a Thule product, and multi-hundred, maybe even $1,000 item. They're not going to come into one channel and convert always. So we need to meet the consumer on their path. If they come into Amazon or our own website or go into retail, and we really are, the next step is for us to connect all those channels and make it a seamless shopping experience and consistent shopping experience for the end consumer.
What are some ways you've been successful in the past or looking to do that, to make that more of a seamless integration throughout the journey?
Well, I think one of the most successful ways to do it is with data, as boring as that sounds, but making sure that the availability and product information is consistent and shared across the channels. That's the boring answer, but important answer. The other answer is brand consistency, and that is where we focus, which is really important for a premium lifestyle brand. But making sure that our brand is represented consistently and accurately across all channels. So that is an area where I think Thule has been successful, and it's the next piece of getting the data connected across all the channels, where the consumer can come in and say, oh, okay, yeah, information here matches there, and now I feel comfortable about continuing on my shopping journey.
So don't ever apologize for data. It's not boring anymore. It's very trendy, very cool, very hip to talk about data, so you're good.
Okay,
so we started touching on some of the brand stuff. How about in terms of consistency, what about the importance of content marketing, across the different stages of the customer journey, and how important do you see it, how much you invest in it, and how much you use it?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, it's been a new big change for us in our digital sales strategy, and one I'm really excited about. We invested in a global resource hired in Sweden to focus on global online content, and he's our new expert on it. So we are shifting our focus there. I do think it's important because in some of our categories, our newer categories, we have to put in that educational layer for the consumer, where they need to sit and digest our content in various ways, aspirational ways, educational ways, really technical ways, before they're ready to purchase. And by doing so, even in this past year, I told you we added that activity shopping layer. We get relatively far less traffic in that shop by activity section. But what we're seeing is consumers are spending more time there, the ones that end up there, and they're engaging more with the content, and they're transacting at a much higher percentage. So it is an important growth area for us and for our consumers, especially in our newer categories.
And so building on that, the different stages, what tactics have kind of been successful in, pushing potential customers from that consideration phase into actually purchasing?
Right. So this is an area where we still struggle. Currently, consumers are still very dependent on customer service, our consumer service team, to make that final purchase. And we have an elaborate fit guide, but what we're finding is consumers aren't getting 100% confident. And that could be, does this fit my specific car model? Will my baby car seat fit on this stroller? Or will this child bike seat fit on my bicycle frame? We've invested a lot of time and energy into our online fit guide, but we're falling short and we're working to fill those gaps. But until we fill those gaps, the consumer is picking up the phone or getting on online chat and emailing our customer service team to get them over the hump, which is great. I mean, because it's saying, the consumer saying, I want your brand, I want your product, but I don't know which item is the best for me. But it is also burdening the customer service team and thus the consumer in the end. So it's an area where we need to grow and come up with a multifaceted approach to fixing it. On the technology side, some consumers are still going to want to call in to customer service, so we need to figure out our resource balance there. So yeah, it's definitely a new challenge for us.
Has the customer service team been able to expand in that area? I assume you've had an influx of, with people not having the live retail opportunities, place to go out. Have you just increased capacity, or you just stretched kind of thin and doing what you can for now? How are you handling that?
Yeah, so the customer service director has probably had the most challenging year with record level demand for our product since the pandemic hit. And he's been really creative. So there is a headcount resource allocation piece that he's constantly evaluating. But like I said, some of it is a technology solution. How do we deliver better content to our consumers? But what we're finding is there's no silver bullet to solve the problem. And all the way up to the CEO, there is dedicated attention to evaluating the issue and making sure that we are properly resourced to meet the consumer's expectations.
So you said earlier, it's true. I mean, these are significant investments for a lot of people. These rack systems, not the higher end in some cases. What's the philosophy and what's the effort as far as developing the longer term relationships with consumers? There might not be they're going to be buying another item for a while, or maybe there's other, tangential items you can buy, bring them on. How do you go about creating that ongoing relationship in that care phase to keep people, committed to the brand and coming back around for more purchases?
I think this is where Thule needs to go next. It's not something I'd say that we're experts in or hitting home runs, but the boring answer again is getting better data. And so it's something that we're taking a step back and cleaning up our internal systems and making sure we're data compliant. Because we're global, we've got GDPR, CCPA. I don't even know the acronyms for Canadian data rights, but Canadian data rights are very strict as well. And we need to comply, but we also need to be personalized, leveraging personalization for our consumers and coming back to repeat purchasers in a meaningful way to help them keep that ongoing relationship with the consumer. We've been looking at some investments in marketing automation, but we are in the investigative phase right now, and we've just been riding on brand awareness currently, and we are ready to get to that next phase of lifetime value consumer marketing.
Shifting a little bit over to the DTC push that a lot of brands have seen, can you maybe just give us a little overview of kind of what the Thule retail ecosystem currently looks like, what the main channels are?
Yeah, so it depends by category, of course. But we have our big national retail accounts like REI and Amazon, LL Bean, Nordstrom. Our specialty accounts are still a huge part, and they have fared quite well from the pandemic, which has been good because that's been a rocky channel, not for us, but just in general with the changing channel evolution. And then our owned websites are becoming a research hub for consumers as well as a transaction hub. But like, as I said, Amazon is an important channel for us because we treat it like a search engine, and we put a lot of resources there. And it's been an important growth channel for us, and we do our best, and I think we're pretty effective in treating it not as a conflict channel, but as a rising tide effect. And where I've seen that the most is in our Canadian market, where we pumped a lot of time and energy into building out our portfolio in Amazon Canada last year, and we're seeing huge growth across all channels in Canada. And I think some of that is a rising tide effect from Amazon Canada in particular.
Of course, so it can be a touchy subject, of course, maintaining these traditional relationships and having growth in one direct channel and then still maintaining, all the great relationships that have been there. Is that the main kind of crux of how you're accomplishing that? With that, the rising tide effect seems to make sense, and it seems like everyone's doing well right now. Has that helped that, political angle, or just the overall, to legitimately come up with a good solution where everybody wins? Do you feel like you're able to mitigate that fairly well?
Yeah, so it is one of the most delicate balances we concentrate on and try to strike. The rising tide thing doesn't mean anything to a specialty dealer until we put data behind it. So we actually do bring data to the forefront and try to say, hey, this is where we have consumer insights from the Amazon channel or maybe sell through on our own websites. And what you're going to see here is triple digit growth in this subcategory. So on your channel, let's shift some resources or some merchandising. So we try to use it as a way to co-collaborate and make the relationship about a learning over here to a success in your channel. That has been effective especially with the channels who lean into that. And the ones who lean in are always the most successful. The ones who push back, we have to manage that balance, but I do find that they struggle more rather than leaning into it. But in the past year, the channel conflict topic has really subsided because everything is about supply. So the most difficult conversations that our sales team is having is, where's the product? I don't care if you're selling it here, there, or there. Just give me product, because I have people asking for it. And so that's been a nice surprise, but definitely a new challenge for our team.
That sounds like a very proactive, also though a very detailed approach, sitting down with these ends and sharing this data. Where does that fall in the organization? Is that on the sales teams to manage those relationships?
Yeah, it is. So national account teams, and they manage the relationships directly. Sometimes we have rep groups where we go through them. And the specialty accounts, definitely we have rep groups to cover the specialty stores across North America. And sometimes it's if they ask for it, we can provide it. But we try to keep a pretty active dialogue between us and those channels.
And what is the general trend been for growth in e-commerce for you? Is it sharp increase, steady? Where do things stand?
Yeah, no, it's a pretty sharp increase. So where I would say pre-pandemic, we're trending at 7% of sales regionally. We shot up to 13%, but due to inventory challenges and inventory allocation, it's tempered down. Once inventory stabilizes, I do expect e-commerce to be over 10% of sales, and on a growth trajectory there. But it's hard to say because inventory is on our top selling goods is so tight right now.
Or so it keeps coming up in inventory side. Where does that stand? Does it look like, are you optimistic that some of those issues are getting better? Is that going to be around for a little bit? And how are you dealing with that?
Yeah, so we are our board of directors and our executive team have made huge investments in equipment. So a lot of the inventory challenges are on the manufacturing side. So hitch bike racks, big one, cargo boxes, where we manufacture many of those products regionally here in the United States. So they've made huge investments in laser cutters and other big manufacturing pieces of equipment. We've been able to triple production with these investments. But with that, there are still some supplier components that we're dependent on. But even with that, we have a really diverse supplier network. And so we're seeing a lot of issues and backlogs clear up. But I'm, with demand not slowing down at all, so I'm hopeful that the inventory challenges subside by the summer, where we hit peak season in that biking and outdoor industry. But I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't say for certain.
Sure. Well, I think that's understandable. No one really does. I'm just trying to get by. Right. What about as far as you talked about the differences in different categories? Are there, in a situation where there's been growth everywhere and supply issues and whatnot, but still, have you seen any clear trends in growth that are hitting specific channels, and have you seen more consistency with e-commerce versus brick and mortar traditional channels? Where does that stand?
So with regard to categories, certainly the bike trend is still riding high. Other areas where we've seen literally triple digit growth in demand and sell-through even is cargo boxes. So that family RV road trip vacation for spring break, summer, even the winter holidays. The cargo box has been an important piece of that. But the other area is child bike seats and multi-sport trailers. So within our Active with Kids portfolio. So families with young kids who want to get out and bike and want to get their little kids on the back of their bike or the front of their bike or in a bike trailer, we have seen triple digit growth there. And child bike seats, while a lower percentage of sales, has probably seen some of the biggest growth year over year. And with regard to channel, because you had asked about that, there's not one particular channel that stands out. I think consumers are just trying to get product wherever they can. And so whoever has an in-stock button, they're going for it. And that's where omni-channel is so important in connecting the consumer, because if we sell the product in all these channels and they can't get it here, we have to do a better job of connecting the consumer to the channel where they can't get the product.
So in the midst of everything that's been going on, is there, there's probably been a lot of wins, a lot of ongoing challenges and battles, but is there anything in particular that you're, particularly proud of and can say like what your team or as a company you've been able to come together and do?
I mean, some of it is really basic. Like my team has showed up every day without complaint and done their job. And I know that sounds so foundational or fundamental, but in such a turbulent year, it is really nice to know that I've got a team of high performers who can just show up and do their performance, whether that's at home, in the office with a mask on, and do the same level of output. I couldn't be prouder of my team for just showing up and doing their job. Beyond that, the customer service team has shown up, done their job, and taken one beating after another. And I'm really proud of the resilience of the team there, because having supply that doesn't match demand is I guess a good stress period to be in. But there were a lot of assumptions that consumers would be generous or forgiving, and really consumers are everything. They're stressed too, and so they bring all of their emotional variances to our customer service team, and our customer service team has done a wonderful job of just continuing to show up and take the beating and try their best to do best by our consumers, which has been really challenging in the last year.
So stepping out of back from Thule Group a little bit and looking at a bigger picture view. I know that you're a member of the Ecommerce Council.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned a lot of times you're on the other side doing some moderating for meetings. I think it might be cool just for this audience to hear like a little bit about what that is, and then why you think peer groups, especially like that, are important right now.
Yeah, so it actually started, the idea started last January when I was speaking with a colleague at SRAM, and she wanted to take some notes about the Thule Pro site. And I was awestruck when she said, "I love your Pro site. You guys do so much well." And I was sitting there thinking, I only think about all the things that don't work for the Pro site. And we casually exchanged the idea of creating an e-commerce council, because my boss will often say, well, go out and find the white paper on what you'd expect gift card adoption rate to look like. And I say, there is no white paper on that. But maybe I can pick up the phone and call my peer at Icebreaker and see what he's done, because he's worked, at other outdoor brands as well, and maybe he's had experience there. So after lockdown was instated, Dragan at SRAM called me and said, now's the time to start that e-commerce council. We're all working in an era that is foreign waters for all of us, so we need to swap notes. So we started that, and I was pleasantly surprised by how willing people were to jump in and share notes. I mean, we have an unwritten rule of you don't share the insights and data that you learn from other industry peers, but you use it as a way to help you make a good decision for your company.
So a little bit support group, a little bit actual tangible resources to pull together.
Yes, exactly. And an odd topic that keeps surfacing is, how is e-commerce or digital marketing structured in your organization? It's so interesting because, in classic business school, you learn, here's sales, here's marketing, finance, supply chain. And digital marketing is trying to find which department it fits in, and every company does it differently. So that's been an interesting topic of learning from one another about how digital marketing and e-commerce is structured internally.
So in that spirit of sharing information and encouragement, I think as we wrap up, I think it might be nice to maybe just hear if you have any kind of, words or thoughts for people out there who are, kind of doing similar challenges, the similar things that you are, trying to get things in line, feeling like, oh, I need to have my strategy dialed and polished and perfect. And anything you'd share with them?
Yeah, I mean, where I found the most success is treating e-commerce as a business within a business and pulling in all of the departments that support it and being at the hub of it. I've gotten the most insights in some instances from our director of distribution. And so people might just say, oh, well, distribution's an output of e-commerce, not an input. But when you collaborate with all the teams that support that business within a business, you are much more effective in running your business. And then the other thing I would say is look for all of the ways to bring the consumer voice to your inbox or to your strategy. I always give the virtual microphone, as I call it, to our customer service team member, who is the one fielding phone calls with upset customers. And I try to reward her for telling us things that might be hard for her to say, like, hey, this isn't working. This is making my job harder. Doing usability testing, looking at product reviews and what consumers are saying, anything where you can get the consumer data and structure that data. I always find that our executive team has a hard time walking away from a recommendation when you put a consumer's quote on that PowerPoint slide about a certain complaint or a problem. It hits them harder, and then they start changing their tune and prioritizing along with your goals.
Jane, thanks so much for sharing all that great insight and information. Really appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure speaking to you.